Namaste, guys. Welcome to this short video for the feet. Just recently in class, we've been working with strengthening postures for the feet and the ankles and the low legs. And because the screen is always quite, the detail is quite small on screen when we're standing far away, I thought I'd get close up so you can see in detail some of those practices that we've been doing. You'll notice that my mat is set up quite close to the wall, so I'm going to use the wall for support when I am doing these practices. And I would encourage you to do that until you feel strong on your feet and you can take your hand away from the wall. Of course, give them a go freestanding if you would prefer, no problem at all. So we're going to start with just a little bit of foot mobility work. So we're lifting all of the toes off the floor, spreading the toes out as much as possible, and then placing the big toes down, but keeping the other toes up. And then we're going to swap and place the other toes down, keeping the big toes up. So we're going from side to side. And I apologize for not having the prettiest feet. I'm afraid that having done lots of ballet and dance and gymnastics in my younger years, I am just find it difficult to get rid of all of the calluses from those practices. So we're just going side to side. And then when you're ready, you can just spread the toes out and release them down to the mat as spread out as possible. And you'll notice when you do that, there's a tendency to sort of collapse in the arches as we spread the foot. When we're practicing in our standing poses, we don't want to collapse any part of the foot. We want the foot to be nice and strong and there to be lots of buoyancy across the foot as well. So let us try to spread the toes out, but without collapsing in the arches. So finding a little bit of pressure into the big toe joint side of the ball of the foot, which means that we can spread the weight of the foot across the whole of the foot itself. You'll notice here that I'm just rolling the ankles inwards and outwards whilst I distribute weight to the inside of the ball of the foot and then the outside of the ball of the foot. Very good. So once we've established some nice spread out toes, we're going to work with coming onto the ball of the foot, but without using the toes. So this is quite a nuanced practice, and it's certainly one that was new to me before I did a recent course about strength in yoga. So we're going to lift all of the toes off the floor, and then we're going to try to gently lift the heels off the floor at the same time. So we're trying to keep the toes up and the heels off the floor at the same time, and then gently lowering down. If I turn to one side, so if I was to come up onto the balls of my feet proper, so how I normally would do that is to come up here, the heels are quite lifted quite high, and actually it's only the very front of the ball of my foot that's on the floor. It's mostly where the toes join the foot, and then release down. If I do it with the toes off the floor, so lifting the toes first, when I come up onto the ball of the foot, my heels cannot lift as high because I'm trying to keep the toes off the floor as well. But I have got my weight on the center of the ball of the foot, so more of the padded part of the ball of the foot, and then gently releasing down. Feel free at any time to give your toes a little bit of a wiggle or to stretch out your feet as we work. And I apologize, my mat's a bit sticky, so you can hear it with my feet. So we're going to try that again, lifting all of the toes off the floor and then just rocking the weight into the ball of the foot to be able to lift the heels off the floor, keeping the toes free of the floor as well, and then lowering down. And once you've got this, lifting the toes, coming onto the balls of the feet, but keeping the toes off the floor, you can have a go with doing the same thing, but then rolling the weight to the inside. So you're on the inside of the ball of the foot, where the big toe joins. So we'll lift all of the toes off the floor, coming up onto the ball of the foot, and then moving the weight to the inside, the big toe side of the ball of the foot. And it's almost like you've freed the outside of the ball of the foot, and we're simply trying to hold that while standing nice and upright, whilst keeping the big toes off the floor. It's really tough to do, and then slowly lowering down. So give your feet a little shake out or a little roll of the ankles. You might like to turn the top of the foot towards the mat just to stretch out the top of the ankle and that space where the toes were flexed, so that you can feel the opposite movement. So we're going to do this a few times. So we're lifting the toes, rocking the weight into the ball of the foot, coming up as high as feels comfortable, and then trying to move the emphasis to that inside front corner, whilst keeping the big toes a little off the mat, a little free of the mat, only just free of the mat in this case, and then slowly lowering down so that we get that slow release. At the bottom of the movement, you might like to bend your knees a few times or move your feet in different ways. Let's do it one more time. So lifting all the toes out. The toes can spread, of course, as well. Bringing your weight onto the ball of your foot. Trying to lift the heels as high as you can whilst keeping the toes off the floor, and then rolling your weight to the inside of that ball of the foot, to where the big toes join the foot. Hold for a moment and then slowly release down. A little soft in the knees, a little stretch out of the feet. And you will probably now feel that. If you need to, you can give your legs a little bit of a shake out or make any other movements that feel good. So you can feel in your low legs the effect of working this way. And it's a really interesting way to work. We're going to now put a little bit more emphasis into that. So I want you to step forward with one foot. Make sure your heel's on the floor, and then lift all your toes off the floor and place the big toe side of the ball of the foot down, and imagine you're trying to draw that towards your heel. So you're trying to shorten the space between the heel and the big toe ball of the foot. And then from there, allow the rest of your foot to come to the mat. So it's almost like you've scooped together the inside side of the foot, but you're distributing your weight then over the rest, like you have cupped the instep slightly away from the mat. Let's try it with the other side. So stepping forward with your heel and then trying to place the big toe side of the ball of the foot down and draw it back towards your heel. You might need to do it a few times before you establish it, and then allow the rest of the toes to come to the mat, so that you feel that you're able to then move your weight into that foot, but you feel like you're gently cupping the inside area of the foot. So you're lifting that back towards it without gripping the mat with your toes, and then releasing. So this is like a variation of the Pada Bandha that we do in class, where in the past we've tried to think about the big toe joint and little toe joint, and then cupping the whole foot back towards the heel. So we create a little bit of extra space underneath the arch. So it's just a variation. And in yoga, we choose the variation that serves us the best. So it might change through your life, but hopefully this one will give you some options to work with. So once we have done this, then we can work on some movement with also this position of the foot. So we're going to really focus on putting the inside, that big toe ball of the foot down, drawing the ball of the foot back towards us, then spreading out the toes. And from here, we're going to come onto our tiptoes as high as feels comfortable, but with the emphasis on the ball of the foot inside edge. So we don't sag into the outside of the toes, outside edge of the ankle. We've got the emphasis on the inside. And then here we can, on the ball of the foot, as high up as we can, bend our knees and try to bring ourselves into a little crouch, a little squat. And then press slowly up to lengthen the legs and slowly release the heels down. Really nice and slow. Everything going nice and slowly until we're back to standing steady. And we can do that a couple more times. So we first free the feet from the floor, lift the toes, establish contact with the big toe side of the ball of the foot. Imagine dragging it back towards your heel and then spread all of the toes as you release them down. You don't need to spread them very far, just have that sense of expanding the base of the foot. And then drawing your weight up onto your tiptoes or the balls of your feet and your toes, trying to avoid sagging into the outsides of the ankles, trying to center the weight, maybe even take some of your awareness to that big toe inside edge of the ball of the foot. And then slowly bending the knees, keeping your heels as high as possible, knees going over the feet. Coming into a low crouch, you might even get your thighs about parallel to the floor, maybe not, maybe. Slowly extending up again. You can hold here and do another one. So bending the knees, keeping the heels nice and high, keeping that emphasis to the big toe side of the foot. Pressing through the feet, pressing through the legs to come up, and then slowly lowering the heels down. And then here, giving yourself just a moment to wiggle your toes, maybe even turn the feet to stretch out the fronts of the feet, the fronts of the ankles, the tops of the toes. And then we'll do one last practice. So dragging the ball of the foot towards you on the big toe side, spreading the rest of the toes down, having that sense of almost cupping your arch, the instep away from the mat, strengthening the foot itself for moving your weight forward onto your toes, making sure it's on the inside edge of the foot. Making sure I have a tendency to grip the mat with my toes, so trying not to do that. And then heels as high as possible, bending the knees and making sure they go over the feet. Just coming a little bit lower if you can, keeping the heels lifted as high as possible, holding briefly, and then coming up slowly and releasing the heels down slowly. You don't need to do many of these. The slower you move and the longer you hold, the stronger your feet will be. So once you've done this, just giving the feet a little bit of a wiggle, a nice little stretch out. And I recommend a bit of relaxation with the legs up the wall after this. So you really allow the feet to be free of the mat, to feel lightness, and you do the opposite with your body for your relaxation, for your counterposing that you have done in your practice. I hope you've enjoyed this practice for the feet, and I hope you continue to use it in your practice. When your feet are strong, the whole body is much easier to hold away from the floor. So it improves your balance, your standing poses. It even improves things like pushing from plank to down dog, as you're able to use the strength of the foot much more readily, and the ankles and the low legs as well. I will see you for another practice soon. Namaste.